Hi there, this is David Randolph Kelly. I intend this for multiple purposes. Um, I intend to go to the city council here for Salem, Oregon, and speak with them. Hopefully, I can get some assistance there. I also intend to go to the United States Department of Justice, and so this is for both parties, and also this will be for any news organizations that may be interested. So anyway, the issue is this: I was arrested. It's been a couple of years ago. I spanked one of our children, and he decided to make some false accusations. And the police came by, I don't know, a few days later, and I was arrested and hauled to jail. Um, so I'm going to go through my notes here real quick. It would be my understanding that a person needs to have committed a crime, or at least a crime would have needed to happen in order for there to be probable cause. So I guess, that could be debatable as far as the context. I'm not an attorney or what have you. All I know is this: the boy had some self inflicted injuries. I think he also had an injury that was caused by somebody else. Um, I was actually eventually taken to, I was jailed right after arrest within a few hours. After the police tried to knock me off my feet as I'm headed to the car in cuffs. So I wasn't very happy about that. I'm headed to the car. I'm not resisting. I'm going peacefully, and the guy tries to knock me down. And the reason he tried to knock me down is because when he said not to talk to the kid, I kept talking to him, told him I was unhappy because he was making false accusations, obviously. But prior to that, they had written Miranda or read me Miranda and said that I had the right to remain silent and the right to an attorney and so forth. So immediately I said, I'd like to have an attorney, and I don't have anything to talk to you about. Quite frankly, I really didn't know what they were after. So I want to stay on context and focus here. The bottom line is that I'd known that he had, or the police rather, had been taking some photographs, so I knew there had to have been some kind of a accusation of some sort, and then they seemed interested in me for whatever reason. And it became pretty clear as I was getting cuffed and pushed toward the car, so to speak. I was going peacefully, but then the guy tried knocking me down because, they wanted me to talk to him, and I refused. And instead, I started asking him a bunch of questions instead of answering their questions. And then when he told me to shut up and that I couldn't talk to the kid, I said, you don't have any authority to tell me I can't speak. I can decide to remain silent, but you can't tell me who I can and can't talk to. So that's when he got angry and started trying to knock me down, and then started acting like, he was hoping that I would push maybe a little bit harder so he could claim I was resisting or something. But anyway, I guess I need to retain a little more focus. Honestly, I'm doing pretty good. This is a very troubling thing for me. So anyway, I'm taken to jail and what have you. I'm getting out the next day, and at that point, I found out that I'd been charged with 3 offenses, which were criminal mistreatment of a minor, assault 4, and strangulation, none of which were true, and none of which they had any evidence of. There was no evidence of any such thing because it hadn't happened. Did the kid have marks on him? Yeah. They weren't from me, however. But if somebody said that they were from me, that means that they lied. And then they later admitted in court, Dakota did, the boy, that those injuries were not at all from me, even though I had been arrested for it. So it didn't make any sense. There's a mark on his neck. It looked like a thumbprint, i.e., that's where the strangulation comes from. Later, he admits in court that wasn't from me. He had a pimply face. Admits that wasn't from me. There's a bump on the back of his head that will be there to this day and has been there ever since I've known the little boy. And of course, he's a teenager now, well into his teens. But I think at the time he was 14. I'd come into his life at 4. So from 4 to 14, he always had this bump on his head. It's part of his head. It's just the way it's shaped there in the back. They made sure when they took me to trial that his hair was grown out so that the jury couldn't see that bump. Nice. So anyway, but when they asked him about the strangulation thing, it is on audio that the boy is incapable of even telling the way in which that he was strangled. Was I supposedly in front of him, or was I supposedly behind him? Or he couldn't say, and he ended up telling the jury, well, it was both. I have the court audio. I know damn well, and I can prove it. I was there. I'll never forget it in my life. I can't even imagine. So I was arrested, charged, jailed, acquitted. I was fully acquitted. The jury found me not guilty of all charges. They gave me a letter that said that they found that I'd, injured the boy in no way. There was no evidence of any injuries that I had done to this child. I.e., how in the hell is it possible that I'm charged with stuff that there are no injuries for? And in the initial police report, the officers wrote in that he had made up a bunch of bogus notes and he gave them to the neighbor across the street who I had had an argument with the week before. And that neighbor is the one that called and made a report because he's angry at me and he doesn't like my wife and what have you. And so he was happy to cause problems, and the kid knew that he was happy to cause problems. And unfortunately, this boy knew about Sun Tzu. As in this particular case, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. What I didn't know was that the kid considered me his enemy when I've been raising him for 10 years, taking care of him like he's my son. So anyway, after this is all said and done, I decide, you know what, I'm going to go down and I'm going to talk to the police. Now that I've been acquitted and what have you, everything is over with. Oh, wait a second. Let me go back for a second. After I was finally acquitted and so forth, that night, I'd already asked my attorney. I said, the supposed restraining order or what have you that's on me, when does that end? He said, well, once the finding of not guilty is written in and, the judgment is entered and so forth, the jury has come back with their findings and all that stuff, then you're a free man. So when I got home that evening or afternoon, I had the opportunity to chew out the neighbor a little bit who started all this problem with the kid, which I did. I have no reason to lie about it. The issue is over, right? Other than I've been harboring all this garbage for 9 months that I've had to go through stress and cost me like $30,000 defending myself, and lost wages and attorney's fees and court costs. I even had to pay for my ass to be in jail even after being acquitted. And then I had to file to get my money back for bail. Anyway. So after that night, the cops show up at my house, start banging on the door, and then they start yelling that they're going to come back with a warrant to arrest me. Of course, did I talk to them? No. I'm not going to do it. I hadn't done anything wrong. I just chewed out a man that I had every right to chew out as far as I was concerned after the fact, and that was the end of that. He and I are never going to be friends. And since then, as far as I know, he's the one that poisoned my dog. And he is also, right after that, tried to talk to me about stuff. And I ended up calling the police and having the police come out and talk to him. And he hasn't talked to me since. And so that saga is kind of at peace. He shot out my window with a BB gun. I'm sure it was him. Can you prove it? No. But I've never had any problems before. So anyway, I went down to the police department after the fact, and I went down there to have a conversation with them about the evidence that would have come out during the court case. Because now it's on audio, right? I mean, we have everything as evidence files and whatever. It's all on audio, and I paid for that from the court, and so I was able to go through there chapter by chapter and listen to all the bullshit traumatic stuff once again. So I have the admissions on the audio that I can share with the police, and then I also have a picture that we found after the trial that shows years earlier this same bump on the back of the kid's head. It's from Christmas, like 2 or 3 years before. And so, I'm able to show that, and then I have the audio that would show that, look, the things that you took into evidence that night that I was supposedly arrested for crimes over, there's admissions here that I didn't do any such thing, and here's a photo that shows that bump has been there forever. That's not something that I did to the kid. And then we also had, it turns out, that the boy's cousin had gone out with him after I was arrested that weekend. They had a chat, and he told the cousin Tim that he had been angry and he made all this stuff up. And then Tim sat there in the courtroom and watched as I went through this whole trial saga as he lived in my house. And then after the fact, after this was all said and done, that's when Tim finally comes to me and says, I had this talk with Dakota that weekend, and he told me that he made all this stuff up and so forth. And I went, you sat here and you watched all this and you said nothing? I was dumbfounded. Now, when I went down there to talk to the police, they wouldn't accept anything. They would not take a police report, and they turned me away. And then about a month or so later, I can't get this out of my mind, right? I mean, it just doesn't ever go away, and that's why I'm coming to you folks, okay? So I end up going to, I thought about it, and I went, I'm going to check with the mayor. And I found out that the mayor has a civil rights person. I believe her name is Gretchen. I contacted her, I made an appointment with her, and I go down and I have a chat and explain what's going on. And she said, well, you should talk to the police. I said, I did, but they refused to take a police report. And I said, I've already talked to them. They won't take it. And she says, well, I can call them and let them know that you're coming down. And I said, can you walk me down there? And so she did. She walked me down there, and they said, well, it's going to be like 20 minutes. And then we'll have an officer come out and talk to you. So Gretchen goes back up to her office. And I sat in the lobby for about 2 hours. And the receptionist finally said, we're not going to have an officer that's going to be available to come out and talk to you. And then I ended up having this guy, I believe he was the duty sergeant. I believe that's who he was the duty sergeant that was in charge that particular evening. Calls me up and he says they're not going to take a report. They're just not going to do it. And I, that honestly, that really pissed me off. And I said, what, fine. So I call up the non-emergency number. I talk to the sheriff's department. They want to route me back to the PD. Well, I don't want to talk to the PD because they're not going to help me. So, obviously that isn't going to work. So I said, what, I'll go down to the state police. So I drive down to where the state police were. Well, it's after hours and there's nobody there. I mean, there's just a buzzer and they say, well, you got to go back down to the PD. So I go back down to the PD and I encounter the same guy that I'd talked to on the phone. And he tells me straight off the bat, we're not going to help you. And do you have any new information and whatever? And the guy was so hostile and threatening that I didn't want to talk to him. I wanted to talk to somebody else who actually was a decent human being that would listen to what I have to say and look at the files that I'm bringing them. And he obviously was not that person. He'd already made his mind up however things were going to go, and it was painfully obvious. It just was. So anyway, I talked to him, and he was turning me away. And I said, I'd like to see your supervisor. And he says that I couldn't. And I asked for the name of his supervisor. And he wouldn't give it. And I said, okay, well, you know what? I'm pretty sure that you have to give me the name of your supervisor. Is there some reason that you can't do that? And he finally spit it out. And I said, how about his phone number? Well, I'm not going to give him your phone number. Is he here? Well, yeah, he's here, but he won't see you. Well, I'd like to talk to him. Well, he's not going to see you. And I mean, we just went this roundabout thing. And he said, and then this jackass tells me, he says, I deal with people like you all the time. And he just has this terrible, horrible attitude. And I said, people like me. I said, so people that are arrested under false pretenses, thrown in jail, extended like $30,000, and have been fully acquitted by jury. That's the kind of people that you deal with all the time? It's Salem, so maybe so. Sorry, I'm a little pissed off, but I cannot even imagine how that kind of shit comes out of the mouth of a public servant. It's just amazing. How many people do you folks know that have been fully acquitted of assault for strangulation and criminal mistreatment of a minor? Because that's the trumped up crap that they accused me of. Okay? So I get done there and I come home. Okay? And I believe it was his boss that called me up on the phone. The guy that wouldn't come down and talk to me, and the one... Okay. I missed something. I'm going to back up. Okay? So I had this thing going on with the sergeant. Okay? He's turning me away and he's treating me this way. Okay? And I wouldn't leave because I wanted to see his superior. And he told me to leave the property, and I wouldn't. It's public property. I want to see his boss, and that's what I insisted upon. That's all I want, okay? I feel that I have the right to go ahead and make a report to somebody that's reasonable, that's going to listen to me. We pay the salary through the taxes. I haven't done anything wrong in order to get thrown in jail to start with. And I think I have every right to bring new information forward to go ahead and give to these people. And I don't think I need to be dealing with this guy because he's a problem. So he threatened me to leave, and I didn't leave. Instead, I got on the phone and I started calling KYKN radio. I started calling Channel 2 News. I started calling the U.S. Department of Justice. Unfortunately, it's after hours, so all I get's a recording. And the guy comes back out, and he tells me if I don't leave, that I'm going to be arrested for harassment because I'm trying to talk to his boss and I'm trying to put in a police report. Seriously. Okay? So he basically chases me out the door because do I need to get arrested again? No, I really don't think so. So anyway, I get home, and it's an hour or two later, and I guess it was his boss that called up, okay? And his boss goes ahead and says, who he is and what have you. And I don't know if I have it written down anywhere at the moment. I may in one of my old notebooks. But anyway, the guy calls up, and once again, he tells me, we're not going to allow a police report to be taken. And we're not going to allow an investigation to take place. And if you would like to make a complaint against an officer, you can do that. Why? Because they know it's an internal investigation and it isn't going anywhere. Okay? It's just not going to happen. And they have no intention on looking at anything. Why? Because we put in the tort notices before the 180 days, which means they're on notice that we can sue them. So they're not going to help me sue them. Okay? So the next day, I end up calling the lady back from the mayor's office. She knew what had happened. She knew that they weren't going to help me, and she'd already talked to them, and that was it. She said from that point forward, she would like it okay if I'd call her every once in a while, keep her informed of what I'm doing, basically, but she isn't going to help me do anything. All I'd be doing is giving her information, which is pointless, right? So, anyway, I looked up some statutes, and if we look at Oregon 419B.016, that's false reporting of child abuse. That guy across the street, I would have a difficult time proving it, perhaps, that he was false reporting, but he's known me for years. And we had an argument the week before, and he had an axe to grind, and so he did this along with that kid. And then the kid admitted, and it's in the police report, that he had given false information to the neighbor, and that neighbor then called that into the police. And on the stand, the neighbor says, yeah, I received it. Yeah, I called it in. They asked, did you know that it was untrue? And he said no. So on the evidence side there, as far as recorded data, it's going to say that he did not know. I suspect that he did. I think he knew the entire time. What he's willing to admit to is another thing. But then as far as the police refusing to let me file a report and unwilling to do any kind of investigation with new information to go there, I believe that is obstruction of justice and intimidation of a witness and retaliation and so forth. I may be wrong because I'm not a law guy. I'm a construction guy. Okay, I mean, it's just is the way it is. So, as I said, my intentions at this point are to make a complaint to the DOJ, and I'll include the audio and the photos and the police reports, and I do have the calendars when I went down to see the mayor's office. There should be some phone logs that I can get through my telephone service, Attn Cellular, that should show the phone calls from the police department that day down to the DOJ and KYKN and so on. So, just is what it is. But bottom line, for the city council for the Salem, Oregon, okay, I want you to know that this happened. And you don't have to take my word for it, okay? You really don't. And if you want to, be critical, please be critical, okay? So do that. Please be critical. Think I'm full of shit. Do it. Think I'm full of shit. Think I'm lying to you. Whatever. It's fine. But I had the documentation. I had the photographs. I had the audio. I have the calendar of when I went down to see the mayor's office. And that day, they also gave me a report number of some kind, although they wouldn't take a report from me. They did give me a number, so there's at least an entry that I was there. Okay? I would seriously doubt that the conversations of either of those officers are going to be on record anywhere, or that they'll admit anything. The entire thing is pretty clouded. The ones that I will say something positive about, even though I went into the Marion County Jail, they treated me with some dignity, which I appreciated. I later talked with the Marion County Sheriff, and I thanked him for the treatment that I was shown there. And he and I had a good conversation, and he was happy to hear that I was fully acquitted. And he and I actually laughed on the phone. Because basically the bottom line is he knows this. We had a 14-year-old kid that was causing problems. He was looking for a fight, and instead he got a spanking. That's what he got. I'm guilty of giving the kid a spanking. As a parent, I can do that. Even though he's my stepson, the law doesn't signify anything that way. There's no father that's ever been involved in his life up to that point other than me. And for 10 years, I had permission for his mother to jointly discipline that boy, including spanking. So I don't appreciate the government getting involved in our lives where the Supreme Court sides with the parents in discipline. Use my bare hand. I was not excessive, and I reasonably stopped when I should have. It was obvious that, the spanking wasn't doing a whole lot. Not that I didn't spank him hard, I did, but it didn't do a whole lot. And so we're going to have to find some other way to battle that attitude. But honestly, after all this and during this process, he's not in our house anymore, and so that solves the problem for me, and I'm glad he's gone at this point. I wasn't glad he was gone then, but, if he's going to act this way and willing to do this kind of stuff, he's better off somewhere else, and we're better off with him somewhere else. So it's just unfortunate that it got to that point. Anyway, that's my spiel. Thank you for listening and watching. And my name is David Randolph Kelly. Phone number is 503-999-4585. Address 2028 Vaughn Avenue, Salem, Oregon, Northeast 97305. So, anyway, thanks. Bye.